There are no accidents in this human body. This body is a miracle. And the fact that we can experience pleasure in such a multitude of ways means that it is an important part of this human body thriving. Women consistently choose stress over pleasure. We're hardwired to do that. That is a biological signal for safety, but it does not serve us well, especially in this modern lifestyle.
Welcome back to Shine In and Out, the space where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, and today's guest is Carla Wainwright, a holistic wellness coach who is trained in health sciences and helps women navigate midlife with greater vitality, embodiment, and self-trust. Instead of seeing midlife as a decline, Carla reframes it as a powerful period of transformation. In this conversation, we explore hormones, nervous system health, identity shifts, and what it means to reconnect with the body during this stage and all stages of life. So let's jump in. Welcome to Shining In and Out, Carla.
Hey, I'm really happy to be here, Samantha.
I'm so glad we finally made it work. Let's begin with your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, like many people, the story is not a straight line. And I guess I'll start with my story being like an absolute love of nature since I was a really young child. And nature was just the place where I had a challenging childhood, and it was the one place that I could be that I just felt like I could just relax and be myself and not have to conform to, what my parents wanted me to do or school or anything like that. So I spent a lot of time in nature, and I was always really fascinated by, just like looking at small things and just seeing the microcosm of everything. And that really that love of nature led me to want to study biology. I first studied health sciences, and then I moved into wildlife biology, and I got a master's degree in conservation biology, and I worked as a wildlife biologist with endangered species for many years. And that was in many ways great work, but it also, through a number of different circumstances, life circumstances, and just actually feeling like, I wasn't making as big an impact. You'd think that, working in the environment would make a great impact, but I just didn't actually feel like I was doing that. And sort of concurrently, after doing my master's degree, I started to go on a healing journey, really to actually heal from sexual trauma that I'd experienced, and was really feeling failed by the medical system. And just, I was struggling more and more all the time. I was getting panic attacks. I had a lot of anxiety. I was trying to really push my body really hard, running and exercise, like trying to just do things that would make me feel better, but it wasn't really working. And I just really felt very much abandoned by the medical system or the system. And so I decided to go to a yoga class one day. And I thought it was going to be really boring and super easy because, I was running long distances and I was really fit. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be, this is going to be so easy. And it was not so easy. It was actually really hard. And
that's what we all say.
I know. It's a common story. And then, of course, like Shavasana was the hardest because I had to just be. But something cracked open inside of me. And I felt something in that class that I had never felt before that I knew I needed to follow and get curious about. So while I was working as a biologist, I did yoga teacher training and I opened a yoga studio and I kind of did double duty for a long time. And then really came to the realization that that was my true calling, was to work with people in terms of somatic healing and coming into the body. And so I left my biology job and really focused on that and did a number of different like branches and avenues from there. So continuing to heal from my own sexual trauma, I became a sexual awakening facilitator and really delve into the power of healing our sexual energy and accessing our sexual energy as women as this creative life force energy that is incredibly powerful and has so much wisdom, but so many of us have forgotten how to access. So I did this for a long time. And then fast forward into my mid 40s where I'm like really in perimenopause and struggling with a lot of symptoms despite, eating well and moving my body and having all of these beautiful embodiment practices and doing all the things that had served me really, really well for a long time. And I began to really realize that there was a piece missing, that I needed to attend to my physical body in different ways than I had when I was younger. And then so
Hmm.
the biology piece came back full circle,
Yeah.
and I started to study metabolic health and really, yeah, really dive into that piece. And so where I'm at today is really a merging of all of these different facets of my life, from my beginnings, of nature and biology, to then moving into the more esoteric and the, holistic wellness, and then coming back in and embracing biology again. And to me, both of those, I call this the sacred metabolism. We can talk a little bit more about that, but that it is really, we need to attend to the person as a complete being. So we have the physical, but we also have the energetic. And both of those things are really vital in order for us to thrive and flourish.
100%. I think that is the entire future, that this through the science and through the human experience, we're now recognizing that in order to heal a whole person, you can't just focus on the body and the physical symptoms. There's a lot going on in here, and there's a lot going on in here, you know? So I'm so excited to dive into all of this. First of all, the recognition of how important nature was to you was beautiful to me. I think it's something that is hard to recognize nowadays because people aren't naturally like taking any idle time. First of all, like you said, you struggled with Shavasana, which for those listeners that don't know, it's the end of your entire yoga class and you just lay there. And in my experience, it is easier to do so after all of the exertion and your brain's kind of just, pudding. but but it's never easy. Same with meditation. Um so in this, society today of just people going, 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 it almost is the harder thing to do nothing. W- Was that something that came naturally to you when you were younger, but was much harder that you found when you began your yoga journey?
Yeah, I think children have a natural innate capacity to be present in the moment. Um, you don't, it's
That's
not
true.
something you have to try to do. You just do it. You're so immersed in whatever is in front of you. And there's such a beautiful, like, innocence and joy that comes with that. And then we're impacted, of course, by life and society and people and intrusive thoughts and all of those sorts of things. And it pulls us out. And I absolutely agree with you. I mean, there are the moments of nothingness are so few and far between. And for many people, they don't actually even exist at all, right? From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to the bed, every moment is filled with something rather than
Yep.
spaciousness. And we've forgotten largely as a culture of just like how to be, right? To just have nothing and just be with that, and not allow it to be uncomfortable. And I think the problem now is that we become so uncomfortable in the just beingness that we reach for something to soothe that discomfort rather than just leaning into it and being with it, because it doesn't last. Just like my struggle in Shavasana. I mean, now Shavasana is wonderful, but it wasn't an overnight. It didn't
Yeah.
happen overnight. I really struggled with it. It is, in fact, the hardest pose. I mean, it's easy in the sense that physically you just lie there, but it is absolutely the hardest pose. And it's done at the end because exactly that. You have a whole
Huh.
practice to kind of prepare you for that moment.
Yeah. That is I love how you brought all of that together. Like, first of all, the societal expectations, like you said, when you were in nature, was the only time that you felt you didn't have to conform to anybody's expectations, whether it be your families, whether it be societies. I think there is so much conforming going on in the way that we're spending our time and the way that we're rewarded for not taking idle time, that even I, who consciously tries to force myself to take that time, a lot of those times I will find myself like, "Oh, a business idea. I have to write this down. Oh, I'm so excited. I have to get started. I have to do this." And it really is like you have to force yourself. But there's of course a balance there because sometimes to tap into your creativity you have to be bored. But
Mhm.
there's a difference between would you say you need flow time and boredom time? That they have a different benefit for us?
Oh, absolutely. But I really think that we need to devalue boredom time a whole lot more. Yes. Yes, we do. And I mean, I'll say that if you, let's say you're in nature and you get this creative idea, I think you get it because you're in that environment, right? Like it creates just like the spaciousness for those creative ideas to flow. If you were tuned into something, let's say you were listening to a podcast, you wouldn't have necessarily had the spaciousness for those creative insights to come through. And, I also think it's like you can't force boredom or you can't force flow. I think you just have to be curious and just allow the space for whatever shows up to show up. And if boredom shows up, which tends to be the much harder one to deal with, it's actually just to have a moment of gratitude like, wow, out of the boredom, something magic could appear. It's who
And how
knows?
lucky am I to be able to experience boredom because that
Sure.
means that I'm not in active danger, Like, but I've said it since I was young, I've never been bored because I enjoy my own company. Boredom kind of has a negative connotation for a lot of people, so
Yeah.
I just don't use that word. Either way, a lot of people are afraid to feel their emotions, but once they do, they see that it's not so bad, and I think that's, like, your first time doing Shavasana. Scary, "Oh my god, I'm alone with my thoughts." But the more you did it, the more you saw that it was like, "Okay, this is doable," and then it became enjoyable, and I think that's how not that it's enjoyable to feel extreme sadness or grief, but that it's so important to
Mhm.
feel those things. In your journey, especially with hormone shifts and whatnot, in many people's experience, you can be hit with really strong emotions. What is your personal protocol or what do you recommend to people as a coach when those emotions come up and there's not necessarily a logical cause for them?
Mhm. I'm smiling just because I have lots of personal examples of that. Um, so often when we hit midlife as women, our emotions really get a lot bigger. And one of the ones that really comes through for a lot of women is anger. And that
Hmm.
was certainly the case for me. And I'll say that I didn't really recognize when that first started happening that this was part of the perimenopausal journey and the whole changing of my neurobiology and all of that. I just couldn't understand why I was so angry. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, my kids couldn't understand why I was a lot more angry. And I wish I could have explained that better.
Hmm.
So one of the things is like when we don't have an explanation, I think the first thing is to normalize it and I wish women knew that when your emotions feel unpredictable or bigger or perhaps like out of control, meaning it's not that you can't have that emotion, but it just feels like you don't have a framework to manage it because it just hasn't ever been perhaps that big. First of all, to understand that that is very normal and something that so many women experience because I think there's a lot of shame around that. And so when there's
Yeah.
shame, then you tend to retreat and then you don't want to feel it. And it just creates this cycle. And we have that saying, of course, in yoga, the issues are in the tissues. So if we don't actually allow ourselves to be with the emotions and allow them to move through us and have some kind of resolution, then that energy has to go somewhere. So my recommendation, first of all, is to just first of all have compassion and understand that there are actually biological reasons why your emotions might feel huge and challenging and difficult and maybe even like too much, that it's not a failure on your part. You didn't do anything wrong. So to have a lot of compassion for that part of yourself. And I mean, the best thing often when we're feeling like that is to just give yourself a little bit of space. So if you can't extricate yourself from whatever the situation is, just like, you know what? This is just too much for me right now. I just need 5 minutes. And then any kind of regulation thing that you can do, whether it's like taking some breaths, just feeling your feet on the earth, doesn't have to be complicated. But those are the kinds of things that I advise women to. There's so many things you can do, but I really think that it does start with understanding, compassion, forgiveness, perhaps sharing the context with others so that they can kind of put a framework around what's happening.
Yeah.
And then doing whatever small, little tiny thing you can do to just bring like a bit of regulation back to the situation.
I could not love that answer more, Carla. I'm always talking about the reason why the biology is so helpful to know is because it helps you to understand. And I truly feel whether it's me just being a logical person with a big heart, I feel like to have unconditional love, you need understanding. And if you don't understand what's going on in your body, you're going to feel guilty, you're going to feel shameful, especially if it's not something that's normalized in society to be feeling. I know a lot of women, as they go into their later years or just have that epiphany recognition that I've been doing everything for everyone else my whole life, like, and how could you not be mad about that? And it's a hard journey to figure out how to serve yourself. And I hope we get to talk about that. But the more you understand, the more you can be gentle with yourself. And then you don't have those other emotions of shame and self-judgment getting in the way of your healing. And it's just such a simple thing that nobody really gets to do. So if you could just give us a little bit of an explanation about how these hormones are translating into such strong emotions, or how say if I were a mother and I kept snapping at my kids, how can I explain to them, or my husband, how can I explain to them what's going on inside me and why it's been hard to control,
Mhm.
and that I am working on it, but that it's something's going on?
Sure. So, very simply, what happens as our sex hormones, so primarily estrogen and progesterone decline, they provide a buffering effect and they support other chemicals in our brain that, like GABA, serotonin, these chemicals that might make us feel more calm, that might help us navigate situations with more ease. But what happens is that with the loss of those hormones, we don't produce those same kinds of neurochemicals anymore. So we get triggered really easily. And that means that those challenging emotions like anger, especially, can really come up. Old trauma responses often come up as well because of
Mm.
those loss of those really important hormones. And so to just simply explain, like, listen, you know what? My biology is changing. And I used to be able to manage all of these things. It used to be a lot easier for me. And now things really, really set me off. And as much as I don't want that to happen, it's actually because I'm undergoing like this really amazing upgrade, but it's bumpy along the way. And so sometimes I get angry and I don't feel good about that. And I know you don't feel good about that, but I'd love to talk about it and just know that I'm just struggling to navigate this. But if we can come together, like in moments of calm, and just talk about these things and like, let me reassure how much I love you and all, just really come back to the bonds of affection in the family unit, that can make it a whole lot easier. Like I said, when my kids were younger, I wish I'd been able to explain that to them better because it felt random and it
Yeah.
felt like destabilizing for all of us because I couldn't figure out why it was happening, and then I felt a lot of shame around it, right?
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Understandably so. But I think what you're suggesting here is owning it. Like, I recognize that I can be snappy sometimes. And I think that in and of itself is a beautiful lesson. Like, if you are perfect all of the time in front of your kids, they're not going to know how to use tools when they're not perfect. And if you are imperfect, but claim to be perfect, that's almost worse because then they're not learning how to have those types of conversations, though, have those, I'm sorry this has been going on. I'd like to give you some context. I care about you and I don't want this to be the case, but bear with me here. When you show that you're imperfect and you're vulnerable enough to recognize it instead of trying to push it under the rug, because it's never really not there for either of you. You can just pretend it is. It's, I think, a lot more powerful way to reach understanding, which is a lot more easy way to reach that love and that healing together.
Yeah,
So I really, really love that.
I completely agree. I think that accountability is one of my core values.
Hmm.
And yes, and first of all, no parent is perfect. Perfection is a myth that unfortunately we
Yeah.
try to live up to. And of course, so it is actually in our moments where we are not, quote, perfect, that are the greatest learning opportunities, for yourself and your kids. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And yeah, like own it. I just had a really bad moment. That was not my best mothering moment by a long shot, and I'm sorry. And when I feel more calm, I'd love to talk about this and provide some repair as needed
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. I think it gives permission for the people in your life to not be perfect all the time either.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to feel like you have to be perfect all the time. I've been there and it really messed with my physical health. So, um, which, is a big part of your work, the connection between all of the things that are going on inside versus outside. So, I am curious though, since you started in such a science heavy background, same as I have, and you drop into this yoga class or you're looking into all of these healing things, was there any kind of pushback from your logical mind versus your, like, this feels right type of intuition? How did you kind of find the immersion between the science and the soul?
Oh, that's a great question. Sure. Of course. Of course, there was pushback. But then in some ways, I think that there was a little bit of a switch. So, definitely at the beginning, lots of questioning and lots of like, how could this possibly be anything? And I mean, I actually had the same experience with homeopathy that
Hmm.
I took a homeopathic remedy. There was a woman who had a health food store and she was doing her practicum in homeopathy and she needed some people. And I'm like, why not? I'll just try it. I don't know why. Like, I don't know why I said yes, but I did. And she gave me a remedy. And I had been experiencing chronic bladder infections that, I didn't want to keep taking antibiotics, but nothing seemed to touch. I was getting them all the time. Anyway, I took this remedy and I ended up with a big healing reaction. And then I have never had a bladder infection since. And I was like, how could this little white sugar pill that has some numbers on it, like, and it apparently has like no discernible trace of anything. Like my scientific mind kind of short circuited. It's like, this is impossible. This is ridiculous. But I had these experiences like the yoga class, like, other transcendental experiences with homeopathy that something was happening and I couldn't explain it. My rational, logical, scientific mind, which was very, very much connected to my inner masculine, which was
Hmm.
great, could not really explain that. And so that was part of my path to actually embracing a more of the inner feminine, the divine feminine, and not actually needing like a scientific explanation. So then I in some ways I kind of swung the other way entirely because of my lived experience and the experience I was having with others. And now I would say that I still am very questioning from my rational scientific mind, especially when I'm learning things about the body, anything to do with lifestyle that I would recommend to somebody. I want to really understand what's happening. And at the same time, I also know there's lots of things that we can explain. And there's a lot of hubris in science that we think we're always at the pinnacle of knowledge. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're always in the infancy of everything. And there's lots of stuff we can't explain. And that doesn't mean it isn't happening. So, I think that I'm able to straddle both of those
Yeah.
things now.
Yeah.
It
And
took a
like you
while.
said, yeah, but it really like, I think finding your purpose is at the end of things going to be an integration of all of the things that make you you. You know the science, you care about it, you've worked with all of these endangered species. And if we look at our well being as endangered, I mean, it kind of is in this day and
Mm.
age. So you're saving us in that sense. Really, I really appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table here. So you doubled up for a minute though. How did you was it like, here's my work and here's my passion with the when you were doing the yoga teaching, but staying with your um, science career? And were you burning out, or was it like, finally, I feel like there's something that's clicking?
I'd say for a while, I would be teaching, I'd work all day and then I would teach classes in the evening. And it was just, I just loved it. It was fun. And it felt actually like a nice antidote to the
Hmm.
very kind of cognitive heavy pieces of my day. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there was necessarily a conflict, but as I moved through my career and I think for many people, especially entrepreneurs, like purpose and feeling like you're connected to your dharma, like your soul's purpose is just it's like a north star. And when I was really honest with myself in terms of the impact that I was making in the world, and that's, what I want to leave this world a better place than I think everybody does. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's not true, but, that's always been really clear to me. I felt as a biologist, I was kind of like just the person who was rubber stamping things because they needed to
Mm.
move forward with whatever industrial project that they wanted to do. And, they had to have a biologist sign off on it or participate. And I just didn't, of course, I had a very rose colored glass view when I was in school and thought I'm going to be saving the wolves and saving this and saving that. And
Mm.
the reality, at least for me, was not that. But when I was working with people, with women, and I would see the incredible impacts that what I was teaching and guiding them through or having in their lives, I was like, this is real. Like
Yeah.
this feels like I'm aligned with my purpose. So I will always be connected to nature. I will always advocate for nature. I mean, nature is such a huge part of my life. It will always be like that. But it became more and more clear that where my greatest impact was. And so then it just
Yeah.
felt like I had to make that choice because I wasn't being in service to myself or others by staying with that job.
Yeah. I completely understand that. There's a huge difference between, like you said, kind of stamping something for bureaucracy's sake versus watching somebody's life change because of something that you said. Like that's what lights me up. Being able to change someone's mind with a sentence that like they can never see something the same way again and they're even that much closer to healing. So, I mean, you've mentioned a few times the system, the medical system you felt kind of betrayed by the medical system and the system that kind of prevents you from feeling like you're making a real difference in the environment. All of those things, like I struggle with that too. And I'm like, how do we make our impact? We can't really rebel against the system, but how can we make it with the system? Like, how do we, and as soon as holistic healing is like turned into a system, are we going to lose this one-on-one, I think what is so beautiful about it is that there is no system. It is individual people finding someone that resonates with them, that has had their own experience, has learned all of the lessons, and can give warmth and understanding as well as treatment in different forms. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. So as soon as there are control structures in place, then things become distorted.
Uh-huh.
Not to say that they might not still be meaningful or valuable, but yeah, I'm in agreement with you that there's this need for it to be outside of the
Regulated.
system and for people to be really guided intuitively and just being able to make those
Yeah.
connections. On the one hand, that means that perhaps not as many people benefit from it. And there may be a happy medium to that. And I do actually think that even in terms of some of the bigger systems that are in play all over the place, that there are small, meaningful shifts that are happening. But yeah, I think, well, I'm kind of a rebel at heart, so I don't really want to be controlled by anybody.
Well, it is interesting, right? Like I mean, some people look down upon life coaching because it's not regulated or because you don't necessarily need a credential to do so. And of course, there's like ethical boundaries that each individual should be held to. But if you try to keep somebody into a curriculum of the way that they're helping someone, it is such an individual thing and it is a holistic thing. You're looking at the person as a whole. And I was talking to somebody the other day that was talking about doctors and how the system was meant to be like they have specialists. So if you're a GP and you see something wrong with somebody's gastrointestinal system, not your problem. Like, that's that guy's problem. But what you
Mhm.
don't realize is people don't like have the time, the money. Like, specialists are amazing when you have the resources. I need somebody who understands all of me and is willing to dive in with me. Even if I'm a coach and I've never encountered a problem that someone is experiencing before, I'm going to dive all the way in. I'm going to feel it with them. It's an entirely different approach, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the huge problems with our health system is it's so compartmentalized. And so the example you gave is the perfect example, right? We are not made up of a whole bunch of individual parts that somehow aren't intricately and related and complex, right? We're a whole being.
Exactly. And in that sense, you also talked about energy and how you do energy work. Could you explain a little bit about that to people who have only really encountered more physical types of therapy?
Sure. So maybe I'll actually start by just explaining what I term the sacred metabolism. So because it speaks directly to energy. So from my viewpoint, we have two energy systems. So we have the physical energy system, which is the metabolism that everybody's aware of. You know, we take food in, that food is converted into energy in our bodies. All of those metabolic processes happen, and your body just does what it's going to do. But we also have an energetic body. And so this is much more related to things that we can't necessarily quantify, but very much connected to our creative capacity, connected to pleasure, connected to joy, connected deeply to intuition. And these experiences that, like I said, are hard to quantify, these moments that we have that feel just they're somehow we just sense an energetic experience that is happening to us. And everyone has had those experiences. Like you can even just think about seeing something incredibly beautiful, the birth of your child, the incredible sunset, something in nature, something where you are touched in a certain way. This is speaking to your energy body, your etheric body. So this sacred metabolism recognizes that you have these two energy systems and they're equally important, right? We don't just so we're not compartmentalizing and just seeing the body as kind of all in the physical realm and inputs in and inputs out. We also need to tend to the energetic being, which really connects you to your purpose, right? To consciousness and the evolution of your own consciousness, which is, what I think is our purpose here on this planet is as humanity is to continually evolve our consciousness and expand that, generation after generation after generation. So energy work can look like a lot of different things. There's many different kinds of energy work. When I am working with people, a lot of it has to do with nervous system, like starting with
Mm,
nervous system regulation so that you can actually begin to feel. For so many of us, because of our life circumstance and trauma, we are very disconnected from actually the sensory capacity to feel energy, to feel what's below the surface, to connect with deeper wisdom and insight. So a lot of practice around nervous system healing, nervous system regulation. Pleasure is a huge part of what I teach because pleasure not only has an incredible effect in the body in terms of really supporting the metabolic system, lowering cortisol and insulin and supporting your sex hormones and your thyroid hormone, etc., but it also drops us into this capacity to feel more, to pick up on energy, to get out of what is often a loop in terms of being stuck or rigid, armored, and to be able to open up and expand, and so to feel beyond this physical form. So these are just some examples, and that could be through breath, that could
hmm.
be through the senses, that could be through meditation, visualization, just deep relaxation techniques, and then also different kinds of attunement practices to start to listen to that inner knowing, because that is the piece that really connects you with your energy body.
It's interesting because I think I have observed that very strongly among the people who have their walls up. They've been through a lot. That's how they learn to protect themselves. They aren't as able to sense other people's energy as well. Um, and I am very susceptible to other people's energy, but I feel like everyone has had the experience of, "Oh, I like your energy. I like your vibe." And that's like maybe the simplest, way to explain that we can feel each other's energy. You can be around certain people, and even though everything like on the surface you get along great, but for some reason every time you leave you feel drained. It's so interesting. It's another layer of existing as a human, existence in general, because everything is energy.
Yes.
So, so I'm so curious with the pleasure aspect of things, because I think if people understood why pleasure is important, it might allow them to experience it more so. Not only that, but the self-judgment, hedonism, you don't want to indulge the whole parable of deserving. What would you want to say to just kind of cut through all of that?
All of that noise. I
Yeah.
was gonna say something else, but I'll just stick with noise. Yes, pleasure can be a really loaded word. And on the one hand, we're sort of inundated with images and a society that is steering us towards pleasure, but in many ways it's a very distorted form. And then on the other end, we have, this kind of puritanical, which comes from, religion largely of, pleasure is bad and shameful and
Yeah.
sinful, and you shouldn't experience that. I personally, I believe that as human beings, we are one of our birthrights is pleasure because we can experience it so profoundly. And I feel like there are no accidents in this human body. This body is a miracle. And the fact that we can experience pleasure in such a multitude of ways means that it is an important part of this human body thriving. Women consistently choose stress over pleasure. We are hardwired to do that. That is a biological signal for safety, but it does not serve us well, especially in this modern lifestyle. So we will consistently choose a stressful thing, and that might even just be scrolling on your phone versus like hugging your partner or, having a tender conversation or whatever that is. So my pitch, I guess, is that you are hardwired for pleasure, even though you may not consciously choose it. Your body is really remarkably created to experience pleasure. And when we do experience pleasure, we release chemicals in our body, particularly oxytocin, that have such a positive effect on our physiology, right? So pleasure is actually, it is the antidote to cortisol. It is the antidote to stress, even though we choose stress. But here's the thing. As human beings, we have been gifted with conscious choice. So we can make a decision. Now, sometimes that's not always easy and we go to a default, and that might take a lot of repetition and intention to move in that direction, but we have the capacity to choose. And so when we do make that conscious choice to move towards pleasure versus stress, we gift ourselves with this beautiful biochemical process that lowers our cortisol, that instantly makes us feel more connected, that regulates our metabolism. It lowers, like it makes us more insulin sensitive. All of those hormone fluctuations are fired. All of that begins to even out because those pleasurable moments really sit at the apex of our entire hormonal hierarchy.
It's
So it's
so
kind of
interesting.
biologically something that you are meant to do. There are no mistakes in this
And it
amazing
is
body.
kind of like it doesn't matter what comes first. Your body, it doesn't matter the order of things. Like, if you find that you're experiencing pleasure, it means your nervous system is not in fight or flight. It's in a, healthier state. But if you're in an unhealthy state and you choose pleasure, you're getting yourself to that point as well.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a positive feedback loop.
Yes.
The more pleasure you experience, the less angst you put yourself through. But yeah, it's a big, especially religiously, factor of guilt. And maybe part of that is redefining the definition of pleasure, or maybe creating a discrepancy between the overindulgence versus the serving yourself, you know?
Yeah.
It's very different.
And overindulgence, it's entirely subjective. You know, what you might find overindulgent might be no big deal for me. So if that word is charged, and sometimes it is really charged, just choose a different word, like things that feel good,
Yeah,
things that bring me joy. You can frame it in words that maybe have less of a charge and make it feel a little easier to open and receive.
I love that you said subjective because I describe it as an equilibrium. Instead of everybody saying, I need to achieve balance in life, and, Buddhism, whatever it might be, people are saying, I need more balance, work and play, whatever it may be. But as a biologist, I was like, no, it should be equilibrium because not everybody's reaction has the same ratio of products to reactants.
Yeah.
We just need to find what ours is. And a big part of that is learning to listen to your body, what feels right. And I think that pathway is pretty blocked off for a lot of people. How do you teach people to listen to their bodies again? You kind of have to learn a whole new language and attempt to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. You're entirely right. It is like learning a whole new language, especially if we have pushed that away and discounted it, right?
I
So,
definitely did.
yeah, the ego is pretty strong, right? The mind is king, and that's, I'm going to run the show here. So, learning to listen to the body, first of all, it's really about creating small moments. So, this idea of titration, where you get a small moment where you lean into something that might feel new or different, or perhaps even a little bit uncomfortable, and then you bring yourself back. And you just do that over and over and over again. And so, you probably do this also with your clients. It's like when you're creating the container for somebody where they have the space and time, because you're guiding them, they can move in and out and begin to just have a momentary experience of what that might be like. And then that builds upon itself.
Hmm.
And so then when they may have an opportunity to recognize, like, oh, okay, so that was, I had this feeling, and then maybe even getting into a sense of like, oh yeah, what was that feeling like? Was there a color there? Was there a shape? Like, was there a movement? Like getting that description to really anchor it in, then they begin to see how they can do that in very small, titrated ways in their own life. And then it'll happen randomly, and then that builds. So, so much of what we've been talking about today, this is really about creating new neural networks in the mind so that it becomes easier and easier and easier over time to actually access. But it has to start really small. It took me a long time to learn how to listen to my body because
Yeah.
I didn't trust my body. Right? I'd had trauma. I didn't trust my body. Everybody venerated my mind. So I was like, okay, my mind's really good. I might as
Yeah.
well just go with the mind all the time.
Yeah.
So it was a slow process. And I think also sharing that with people, that it is a slow process and you can't force yourself into it, but consistent, loving, compassionate practice and leaning into it is so, so effective.
Yeah, seeing the body as a benevolent teammate, like, "Hey,
Mhm.
we got this." What that brought up for me was we've been talking, of course, about how the medical system focuses so much on the physical, and we need to bring in the emotional, the perceptual, all of these experiential. But then on the other end, you go to psychotherapy, and it is all about what's in your head. But we need to bring embodiment into that. How does it feel? Where is that showing up in your body? Because people are afraid to be in their bodies and with their feelings. Um, so that was really interesting, and it was crazy the way that you described it, like, you kinda just, like, push in a little bit and then you go back, because that is what makes your brain feel safe, and that's physically and mentally, emotionally. I had a physical massage therapist on, and he created this whole technique, wrote this book called The Stretch and Release Technique, Butch Phelps, and his whole idea was that if you're just trying to stretch something like hardcore like that, your brain's kind of freaking out and it's going to tense the muscles. So you're not really getting anything good out of that. If anything, it's, you're prone to injury, whatever it may be. But he does like stretch a little bit, then release, stretch a little bit, then release to make your brain feel safe
Mhm.
that you and your body trust each other, that you're not going to push it too far, and then it can relax into the fascia and actually let you heal. So it's so interesting that you described it that way because it totally just brought that back for me. Maybe it really is baby steps in everything.
You're totally right because we often try to the mind tries to override. I'm saying I'm going to force myself into feeling safe but your nervous system, you can't force it, right? The reptilian part of your brain, the ancient part of your brain, it is separate from what your conscious mind is saying. So, yes, we have to do things in a way that allows our nervous system to come into this place of being more regulated, perhaps, dipping into more parasympathetic if you're someone who's, constantly in fight or flight. And we have to we have to do that in a very you said something about benevolence. I can't remember exactly, but it was such a beautiful.
Benevolent teammate. Your body
Yes,
is your
yes,
benevolent
exactly.
teammate.
That's so beautiful. Um, and just recognize, yes, there is a part of you and it's asking for that support, not to be forced into it. Just think about how you might maybe teach a small child to do like some kind of a skill for the first
Yeah.
time. They're not going to master it right away. They need lots of repetition and kindness and encouragement and all of those things.
Got to be gentle with
Yeah.
yourself. Absolutely. So, one of the things for me, and I love that you're a fellow biologist, you seem very secure in just saying you don't need a reason. And I respect that so much because I find myself like in the logical, I guess, masculine part of my brain, like, okay, unconditional love. I have love for people I've never met and I care about what happens in their lives. What is the evolutionary basis of that? Like, I'm always trying to like pair things together and understand them
Mhm.
from both a biological perspective and I don't know, just like allowing it to be has been difficult for me. As a scientist, for things like that, do you just genuinely do you dig and try to find where they meet, or do you just I don't need to know. I feel it and that's enough.
I think sometimes it's a bit of both. As you were describing that, there was a part of me thinking, well, so yes, we have very strong evolutionary drives and biological reasons that all sorts of things happen in our day-to-day experience and what happens in our bodies. And then there is this remarkable part of ourselves, like if we come back to this whole idea of humans and our consciousness evolving into something. I don't know what that is, but it is something that is grounded in love and the exalted emotions of compassion and true acceptance. And maybe that impulse that you have to care deeply about people you've never met. I'm sure there is a behavioral scientist who might have an explanation. I don't know what it is. And it might be interesting to look at, but intuitively, I feel like that's actually part of humans perhaps in some ways not transcending their biology, but moving into
Hmm.
something even bigger that isn't
Because
necessarily explained that way.
I mean, I know that the reason why we have made it this far as a species is because we're so able to collaborate very efficiently and communicate and all of these things. But realistically, if I were a cave person in one place, I'm not thinking at all about anyone anywhere else. So there is definitely a disconnect between the evolutionary drive to care about a member of your species and having a actual response to caring about the well-being of a random person that
Yeah.
will never have any consequence in your life. So yeah, I appreciate that perspective. It can be both. It can.
It can be both.
Um,
And I guess I'd ask you, would it change anything if you had a scientific explanation? Like, would it change the fact that you care about somebody that you've never met?
no, but I do. For me, finding the subtitle of this podcast is Where Science Meets Soul.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find.
Sure.
I'm trying to find where the science ends and the soul picks up.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can explain like the emotions that we get from like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. We can explain that to an extent, but then there's a lived experience that feels more soulful. There's like a physical bit and then there's a subjective bit. And I think, well, and then you get into, because we're humans and we only have our sensory perception going for us, we have very little idea of what's actually going on in the world. So, like an actual universal truth. So, and I feel like our souls would know the universal truth, but our human version is like this ego-driven, understanding-driven, version. And as soon as we can let go of that, we can be in that place where it doesn't matter that we have an explanation. But there's like, I'm always kind of in a constant, not battle, but like I'm digging. And I enjoy it. So it's not like it tortures me or anything. But the truth is, there might never be an actual answer. And as a scientist, I'm very much like, I need data to be able to say that the soul exists. But at the same time, I know it. I feel it. Like I'm reading a book right now, because I'm trying to debunk myself as I go as well. Sapolsky, he talks about, if you had the exact same DNA, the exact same upbringing, every single thing, that you would be exactly where that person was. I really, for some reason, don't believe that. I, yes, okay, so personality-wise, there is a certain percentage that is genetically determined, and a certain percentage that is environmentally determined. But there's something in there that's like predetermined, and I consider that to be the soul. It's just very hard to pick it out, and I don't know. I just get excited talking about it. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, first of all, I love your enthusiasm and curiosity is like contagious. So
Thank
love
you.
that. Yeah, I mean these are the great mysteries, right? And this is what mystics have been trying to, and religion's been trying to explain for thousands of years. And so I love that you're digging deep on these things, because I think that there's a depth that comes from that. Maybe not like a black and white understanding, but there are all of these like nuances and different threads that take you in
Yeah.
different places. And it's like the feeling of what you're trying to uncover expands and grows. And then that
Yeah.
solidifies into something that feels more tangible. So yeah, I mean, I think that's great. You're inspiring me to be a little bit more
Ah,
curious about that. Yeah.
oh, well, keep a dialogue with me. That's awesome. Yeah, I was even reading an article, like a scientific journal article. A physicist, all of her other stuff was very, science heavy, and this was science heavy as well, but it delved into proof of there being a universal consciousness. And then I was like, what if that's the soul? And like, it's just so interesting. So I'm glad I have a buddy in this topic now. um, but as we're wrapping up for this episode, because I'm sure we have a lot more we could talk about, I'm I'm somebody that's listening to this for the first time, and I'm feeling understood and like kind of unlocked. Like, some of the things that you said I really resonate with, and I want to understand better so that I can be more gentle with myself and, move upward in my healing trajectory. How do you get started? What do you recommend? What do you wish that you knew when you were on this journey before you found all of your tools?
Hmm. What do I wish that I knew? Well, I wish I knew a lot of things. And at the same time, I also recognize that there's a path in life that we often need to take to be able to be ready and open to hear, listen, and experience.
That's true.
So, as much as I would like my 20-year-old self to know all the things my 54-year-old self knows, it doesn't work that way. However, what I would really love people listening to this to know is that, your body is inherently wise. and your body
Mm.
is absolutely incredible. And that there are, even if you're experiencing symptoms and things are difficult and you have all these things going on that don't feel optimal, your body is providing you with messages and clues and also
Yes.
solutions to be able to step into the most vibrant version of yourself. And you may actually not know the roadmap to get there, but there are, lots of resources to be able to do that. And so never give up on yourself. Your body really truly is a miracle. Your life is unique and special and so worth living to the fullest way possible. Like I have this personal saying for myself, like, I want to be turned on by life, meaning
Hmm.
I want to feel so connected
Yeah.
and engaged with life around me, whether that's people, whether that's nature, whether that's, anything that,
Presence.
yeah, exactly. That, when I get to the end of my life, I feel like, wow, I really lived this. I
Yeah.
really lived
It's
this. And that's what I want.
enthusiastic presence, conscious, enthusiastic
Yes.
presence.
Yes.
I love that. And I love what you said about the body having this innate wisdom. If you think about it, like it is working all day, all night, all your little cells, like you get a whole society in there operating in your favor. And when people take it, it's one of the things I would love to study is how shifting our perception from pain as punishment, like, oh, I ate McDonald's for 5 years. It's my fault that I have chronic pain and I didn't exercise, whatever. And switch it over to, like I said, your body is your benevolent teammate. It's trying to communicate to you, hey, things aren't great. I'm doing my best, but I could use a little help from your end in how we treat ourselves. Um, and just from a communication perspective, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to communicate to you that something's wrong, you know? And the sooner you get to that, it's not like I need to be defensive. I need to fight through and I need to feel guilty and shameful about my previous habits. It's like, okay, body, what can we do? So sorry I wasn't listening before. You know, it's, it seems simple, of course, but we got a world of people that I think need to hear it.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd just love to share that I have a free gift that your listeners can download. It's called
Great.
the Vibrancy Guide. You can get it at vibrancyreset.com. And so many of the things we've been talking about today, like, what do I do? What are some easy, actionable
Hmm.
things I can do to start feeling much better in this incredible body of mine? You can just go to vibrancyreset.com and get
Perfect.
started there.
Perfect. And we'll put everything in the show notes as well. Any to work with you, all of those things. Thank you so much, Carla. What a lovely conversation.
Oh, I had so much fun, Samantha. We're just I think we're two peas in a pod.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carla, for sharing your wisdom here today. I think all of us at all ages have a lot to learn from this conversation. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And for more conversations at the intersection of biology, psychology, and human potential, you can find Shine In and Out wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep shining.